Assalamu alaikum students. Our today's video is related to the arrangement of electrons in an atom. So today we will learn about arrangement of electrons in an atom. Now, how can we arrange the electrons in atom? Basically, as you are all aware that electrons move around the nucleus in regions known as electron shells. So basically, electrons revolve around the nucleus in the regions that are called electron shells. Each electron shell, each electron shell can hold a specific number of electrons. Means if we are now talking about the nucleus, this is the nucleus of an atom. This is the nucleus. Nucleus. So, this is called the first shell, means the closest to the nucleus. It is closest to the nucleus and called first shell. This is its first shell. So we talked earlier that each electron shell can hold a specific number of electrons. Means if talking about the first shell, so it can hold a maximum of 2 electrons. It can hold maximum of 2 electrons. When the 2 electrons will be in this shell is completely filled. So 2 electrons in the first shell. Now, the second shell and the third shell. This is second shell. And this one is the third electron shell. Now, how many number of electrons that are coming in second shell or in the third shell? One thing that we have to be means that more cleared about it, and it is like firstly the first shell will be totally filled, then the rest of the electrons will goes into the second shell, and if the second shell is not completely filled, then no other electron can go to the third shell until unless the second shell is completely filled. So most of the cases, the second and third shell can contain or can hold up to 8 electrons. Second and third shell can hold up to 8 electrons. So usually the second shell is fully filled before the third shell and so on, and each and every shell is filled in order. Means firstly the first shell will be completely filled, then the second shell, and then the third shell, and subsequent shells are filled in this way. Now we are writing the second shell contain how many electrons? 8 electrons. And third shell also contain how many electrons? 8 electrons. In this way we are filling the electrons in the electron shells. For first 20 elements, for first 20 elements, first shell contain equal to how many electrons? 2 electrons. Second shell, how many electrons? 8 electrons. Third shell, how many electrons? 8 electrons. And rest of the electrons can go to the fourth shell. They are moving to the fourth shell, rest of the electrons. For example, we are taking over here the example of aluminium. Aluminium is 1327. So 13 is its atomic number, means that number of protons and number of electrons, and 27 is its mass number, atomic mass, or nucleon number, atomic mass or mass number or nucleon number. These concepts you had already learned in your previous lesson. So 13, this represents proton number or atomic number, proton number or atomic number, or number of protons or number of electrons as well. So we are writing its electronic structure or its electronic configuration. The electron arrangements are the way the electrons are arranged in an atom. Over here you can write a statement about the arrangement of electrons. So we can write over here the way the electrons are arranged in an atom is called its electronic structure or electronic configuration. So the way or uh, the method in which we are representing the electrons in an electron shell is known as its electronic structure or electronic configuration. Now coming back to the aluminium, it has 13 electrons in its atom. So we are representing those 30 electrons in an atom. This is aluminium nucleus. Now, talking about its first shell. So the first shell contain how many electrons? 2 electrons. So we are writing over here the 2 electrons. Now it is completely filled. Now rest of electrons will go into the second shell. So second shell we are drawing, and second shell contain how many electrons, students? 8 electrons. So we are writing 8 electrons, 2 and 8. So totally how many electrons? The first two shells are containing 10 electrons. 2 plus 8, 2 in the first shell, and in the second shell how many electrons? 8 electrons. 2 plus 8, 10. Now the third shell contain how many electrons? 8 electrons. But how many electrons are left for aluminium atom? 3 electrons. 1, 2, 3. It means the first shell of aluminium contain 2 electrons, the second shell contain 8 electrons, and in its third shell how many electrons will be fitted? 3 electrons will come in its third shell. In this way we can draw the electronic structure of rest of the elements that are in the periodic table. Means that the table of elements that you have with you is known as a periodic table. Everyone is familiar with it. Now boys or students, talking about the chlorine. Chlorine has atomic number 17 and its atomic mass is 35. In order to draw the electronic structure, our only concern is with this number, that is the atomic number 17. So it is its atomic number that represents the number of protons and number of electrons as well. Because previously you had already learned that atom is electrically neutral. We talked about that atom is electrically neutral. Atom is electrically neutral. And what concept was behind this statement, atom is electrically neutral? Because in an atom we have same number of protons and same number of electrons, and positive charge cancel out or balances the negative charge. So over here we are writing that our number of electrons equals to 70. Number of electrons are 17. Now we are writing the chlorine nucleus. This is chlorine nucleus. First shell. Now you are familiar with this concept, like first shell contain how many electrons? 2 electrons. Now moving towards the second shell. Second shell contain how many electrons, students? 8 electrons. So we are writing 8 electrons. So totally the first two shells are uh, containing or consisting of 10 electrons. How many electrons are left? 7 electrons. But our third shell can contain of maximum 8 electrons. 2, 4, 6 and 7. It means the third shell of chlorine is still incomplete. The third shell of chlorine is still incomplete. You had learned word electronic configuration. So we had discussed this one electronic configuration as well. So what can be the electronic configuration or electronic structure without drawing the shells? If it is asked from you, draw the electronic configuration, electronic configuration of chlorine without drawing the electron shells. So how can we write it? Chlorine atom, which is 17, 35.5. How many electrons? That chlorine atom has 17. So first shell contain 2 electrons, second shell contain 8 electrons, and third shell contain 7 electrons. This is the electronic configuration of chlorine atom without drawing their number of shells. Now, we will discuss the last example of this type, and then after that, we will discuss the further things related to the uh, atomic number or atomic mass or finding the number of electrons or protons or neutrons in an atom. We will discuss those examples as well. Now, our last example is potassium. Just like we have the potassium atom, potassium atom has atomic number 19 and its atomic mass is 39. This is atomic number, and this one is atomic mass. How many electrons do we have in an potassium atom? 19 electrons. So we are writing first electronic configuration and then electronic structure. Let's start with the electronic configuration. As you are all aware, the first shell contains 2 electrons, second shell 8 electrons, 2 plus 8 10. How many electrons we left? 9 electrons. So the third shell can also contain how many electrons? 8 electrons. So in total we have 2 plus 8, 10 plus 8, 18, and the last shell contain how many electrons? 4 electrons. It means the electronic structure of potassium will fit into the 4 shells, means 4 electron shells that we are representing over here, and it is like potassium, its first shell, that is potassium nucleus, and first shell contain 2 electrons, second shell contain 8 electrons, third shell contain 8 electrons as well, and fourth shell contain 1 electron only. So this is the electronic structure of potassium ion. The last shell. This is known as last shell. Last shell is also known as outermost shell. Outermost shell. But in common, we call it the last shell or outermost shell as valence shell of an atom. This is its valence shell. What is valence shell or last shell or outermost shell? The last shell or the valence shell is the shell that is furthest from the nucleus, means that is at the end from the nucleus. It is furthest from nucleus. It is furthest from nucleus. So it is the last shell of electron or valence shell of the electron. So if this is valence shell, so the electrons that are present in this valence shell are known as valence electrons. This one electron is known as valence electron. Valence electrons that are present in the valence shell. So in case of potassium, we have only one valence electron, but in case of chlorine, moving back to the chlorine, this is its valence shell, the last shell, the outermost shell, valence shell. And in its valence shell, how many electrons do we have? 2, 4, 6 and 7. It means that we can write over here the valence electrons in chlorine are 7. Valence electrons in chlorine are 7. Means that there are 7 valence electrons in our chlorine atom. Now we are further discussing our next concept, that is potassium. This one is potassium. This is its chemical symbol or atomic symbol. Chemical symbol of element. It is its chemical symbol of element. 19 its atomic number, 39 its atomic mass. Proton number, we can also write it as proton number, and this one is its nucleon number. Now, writing the different symbols of elements, now we are looking for their number of protons, and so these are our particles, and over here we have protons, electrons and neutrons. So these are our, we can write elements and protons in them, electrons in them and neutrons in them. Firstly, 19 into 39. The second one we can write, take We can take the three examples. Now, second one, we have silicon, that is 14 into 28, and last one we can get the example of argon, which is 18 into 40. So over here, atomic number represents the number of protons and electrons. So in an atom of potassium, we have 19 protons and 19 electrons. Similarly, in an atom of silicon, we have how many electrons? 14 protons and 14 electrons. Talking about the argon, so argon has 18 protons and 18 electrons. Now, how can we find out the neutrons? So, previously you have learned that neutrons are atomic mass minus atomic number, means 39 minus 19. 39 minus 19, answer will be 20. Similarly, over here for silicon, 28 minus 14, answer will be 14, and for argon we have 40 minus 18 and our answer will be 22. So students, this was all about the electron arrangement, means that electronic structure or electronic configuration of the elements, as well as that how can we able to find out the protons, electrons and neutrons in an atom of element. Next, inshallah, we will learn about the further concepts in an atomic structure. Till then, Allah Hafiz.